Hey, today I thought I'll show you some of my work from last week. Now, summer days are hard to photograph. There's too much light and I find that kind of lighting conditions and wind conditions pretty uninteresting. So I thought I'll try to change that and try to create a bit more mysterious and even a little bit like a night or evening feeling into my pictures. Wanted to change the reality a little bit. And then I wanted to photograph speed and movement and use long exposure to do that. And then since you asked for that, I went on my boat and took more boat pictures. So these were the circumstances. As for the tools, I took my Hasselblad Super Wide. This is a wide angle, medium format camera, really nice. And I thought I can capture a lot of the boat and speed and mysterious nighttime with this one. And then to get long exposure working, I wanted to use an ND filter, ND 1000, that limits light 10 stops. And then for the film, I once again had a little bit too much of a selection. I had some Fomapan 100, some Ilford FP4, and then I had a few pictures left from the roll of Portra 160 that I photographed some other work earlier this week. So I wanted to finalize that film and I had now a good excuse to do it. To develop these black and white films, I decided to use Rodinal, and then to develop the Portra I used Tetnal C41 liquids. Now my experience is that when you select a black and white film, you gotta select the developer at the same time. Developer has a huge influence on what kind of results you will get from your black and white film. And it totally changes the characteristics of a film, depending on what developer you use. Not so much with the color film. I personally don't find any difference between Tetnal or Cinestil or any of those developers. So I buy whatever is available. Color development is so much more standardized and these chemicals are so much more standardized. By the way, that's what I like about black and white film, is that you have this variety that you don't necessarily have with color films. I also needed a sturdy tripod on my lake, and for that I used my beautiful Perlebach that, you know, weighs a ton but it's so sturdy. So with these tools I went on the lake and this is what happened. Hey, that was a lot of fun. And now I thought I'll show you the tools that I used and explain a little bit more about them. Some of you might find that interesting, and a little bit about the process, how you get these kind of pictures and how I use these tools. First of all, Hasselblad Super Wide, really nice camera. It's 500 system camera, Hasselblad 500 system camera, in that it uses the same film bags as the Hasselblad 500. And it means that I can change the roll in the middle of the film. This is the gadget that holds the film, and I have a few of these. You know, on the lake I had one loaded with portrait, the other one loaded with black and white. So I can change them in the middle of the roll. You can't change the lens here though. It's always this 38mm f4.5 wide angle lens. And basically this camera is just the lens and the shutter. The body is just this tiny little part. Has no moving parts in the body. Then in this super wide I use the ND filter. ND 1000 this time. Looks almost black. And as I said, it limits light 10 stops. So how do you calculate the exposure for this kind of a filter? It's actually fairly simple. So say you go and measure the light without the filter first. And say you light meter says that the right exposure would be 1/125 of a second. So then what you do with ND 1000 is that you actually do that calculation. 1 divided by 125 and you get 0.008. And then with one ND 1000 filter you just multiply this with 1000 and you get 8. So then now new measured exposure time for those long exposure shots were 8 seconds. But unfortunately that is not enough, but you need to know your film and take into account what is called a reciprocity failure. That's a characteristics of a film that affects the exposure beyond 1 second. So if your exposure time is more than 1 second, like 8 seconds in my case, then you need to take that characteristics into account, and that typically means that you need longer exposure times. Now all the manufacturers have the reciprocity information on their website. I put some links to the description page, but it varies between the films. So for example for portrait, that 8 second was 8 seconds. It's the reciprocity of a portrait 160 kicks in much later, so I didn't need to worry about it. All the pictures taken with this one, exposure time was 8 seconds. With Ilford, 8 seconds means 15 seconds exposure time, approximately. And then the Fomapan 100, the bad boy of reciprocity, 8 seconds turn into 60 seconds. So those shots on the lake, taken with my Fomapan, they were 60-second exposure times. And I mean, in same conditions, black and white film, almost the same speed, 15-60 seconds. If you don't take the reciprocity failure into account, it all will go totally wrong. Then the tripod, as I said, this Perlepach, it's really gorgeous. And somebody told me that a wooden tripod is the best tripod to limit the vibrations. I don't know if that's true, but it certainly is possible. And already by the sheer weight of this tripod, it gotta temper some of the vibrations from my two-stroke engine. Let me show you a picture and zoom in. You know, this was 8 second exposure time, and from this picture, this is the sharpness I get using this tripod, and I find this pretty amazing. Okay, and two more things actually. Once again, a reminder to myself. Don't take the dark slide out from your Hasselblad in the bright sunlight. At least turn your back to the sun and do it in the shade. Because if you do it in the sunlight, you are bound to get some reflections into the film and you get pictures like this. I mean, I kind of like it in those pictures. So sometimes these lucky accidents, I like them and I don't mind. But you know, if you don't do that on purpose, you gotta remember the Hasselblad dark slide challenge. And then lately there's been issue with the Formapan 100 in this 120 medium format size. And I contacted the support of Formapan. That's actually an excellent company when it comes to their support. They are very responsive. So they had a patch of Formapan 100 in 120 format that has problems with their anti-halation layer. That's a layer that blocks the reflecting light inside of the film, and that is supposed to evaporate and sort of wash away when you develop your film or pre-wash it. But this batch of film, even if you pre-wash it for tens of minutes, it won't disappear. And it leaves these little dots on your film. Pretty annoying. So I contacted the support and this is what I got back from them as I sent them some example scans. Our quality department has confirmed that the purple spots are decolorized residues of the anti-halo layer. You can save your negatives using bath of ethanol, 50 to 70% ethanol, for 45 minutes with mild movement. Not wild, mild movement. So I bought myself some ethanol and sure enough, I could wash those things away. But what like 45 minutes in this ethanol mix and movement, and quite a lot of work. But hey, that works, no spots. One warning though, I don't know what's the chemical characteristics, but when you make 50-50 mix of ethanol and water, it heats up. It heats up significantly. So if your starting point was about 20 degrees, it goes to 35 degrees or whatnot. So you better start with the cold water when you mix your ethanol. Hey, so that was a lot of fun. I like the results, I like to have a theme and then go and execute it. I like the challenges, like with the film and calculating the reciprocity. That's part of the fun with analog film, that you kind of are in the control of your process, but then accidents happen and then you need to know your gear and then you need to make your gear work for you. That is so much fun. So could be worse. So once again, thanks for joining me on the trip and listening to my technical explanations. Next time, something else.